Hey guys, welcome back to episode number 4 of the City Skylines map making tutorial. Sorry this has gotten to 4 episodes, but I think it's best to dive in as deeply as we can. So let's get back to it and wrap this thing up. Alright, I wanted to bring you guys back really quick because I am pretty much done with what I said I was going to do in terms of cleaning up the edges. You can see I faded out a couple of areas and then worked on combining or painting over some of the rivers to help give them a little bit of gradation as they move up from the lower ranges. And I have checked this in City Skylines and it works pretty well after I go through the next few steps. But the one reason I wanted to bring you back is because what I realize is that I've got these values. So I've got this lowland darker gray, and it's pretty subtle between these two. And we want that to be pretty subtle. And then as it starts going up the mountain ranges, we want it to be a little bit more a steeper difference between the two colors. But there's a little bit too much of a difference in my mind between, let's go ahead and turn off some of these mountain layers. I'll turn off the upper ones. But between what this contour 3 right here is, this kind of light gray, like a 50% gray, which I think, is it 50 or is it 60? Let's check real quick. That's a 40 right now, so we cancel that back out. And this 2 contour here. So I think what I want to do is I want to add a layer in between those, which is why I created this contour 2.5 layer. As I'm going to add a second layer into here that I can add another value and make another subtle. What I'll probably do is knock 2 back just a little bit in terms of value and then add in 2.5. And then the other thing I realized, and I'm sorry I didn't do this earlier, but this is useful information now, is, in fact, let's go ahead and turn this on, and you can see how it blacks everything out. We've got our threshold here that I've opened up, and we can start pulling that back, but it's really hard to see. I mean, you can't see anything below that, so you can't see any of the ground layers. And what I was doing earlier is I was messing with the opacity of the threshold and the cloud separately. What I realized, and the problem with that is, real quick, if I start changing the value of the threshold, you still can't see anything below it because the clouds layer is still 100% opacity. But if I start messing with that opacity, see what happens to the threshold, because that threshold's reading partially the opacity layer. So that's why that doesn't work. But what I found is if I click on the working layers on the group itself and then change the opacity, it keeps the threshold and the clouds layer, but allows us to see down below. And so this is really valuable in this scenario, because now, let me turn this off real quick so you can see it. We've got this lightest gray is contour 3, and that second lightest gray is that contour 2. And what I want to do is I want to hit right in between. Now, with this turned on, I can see that. I can see through all this ghosting that I can work on this this threshold layer, and you can see right there that's almost exactly like 3. Up in there, that's almost exactly like 2. And so now I can find that spot in between that looks best to me, which I think is going to be right in there somewhere. I think that looks pretty good. Right about there. I'm going to call that it right there. All right. And so now I've got that set. Now I can go back into my group layer here, turn the opacity back up, and now I've got my alpha channel already. So let's go into channels here. I'm going to go ahead and add a new channel. I'm going to call this alpha 2.5. And I can probably drag that up into here just so I got it better, and then go back to layers. Oops, make sure we don't have the actual alpha channel on right now. Control A to select all of it, Shift Control C to copy everything below. And now I should go into channels into my alpha 2.5. Did that work? Control V. I always seem to do this at least once. I'm not sure why. So let's do Control A again, Shift Control C for copy, merged. Let's try it again here. There we go. Perfect. And now we've got our alpha 2.5 layer. So let's deselect that real quick. Go back into, let's go ahead and make sure that channel's turned off so it's not, there we go. We can turn off our working layers because I don't need that anymore, and then go back to our 2.5, select load selection. Now we could do our alpha 2.5 channel, and you can see, boom, it hits exactly where we want it. Then I can do the Alt backspace again to fill it in, and it's in the right spot. Boom. Now I can copy again, Alt, drag the FX over it so it's got the right color overlay. And let's go back one step and see Stop. Get me out of there. Get me out of there. Let's see what contour 2 was. And I'm going to knock that back a bit. So I'm going to go back, send this back to, we'll send it back to 18. So it's a subtle difference, I think. Let's see what this one was down here. That was 20. So let's knock that back also to 15. So now you can see we've got this really subtle change between some of these lower areas, which is what I wanted. And then we can set this one to, we'll set it at maybe like 20, actually 25 was pretty good, I think. Maybe a little less, it looks a little bit too close. So let's set it to 22, maybe 21, about 20, that's better. I think that's what I'm looking for. And then you can continue to add those layers in. If you just want to add more and more fine detail so you can get these more interesting slopes on it, you just continue to add in as many contour layers as you want. And it's not going to change anything later down the road. And then the last thing I think I wanted to do was to go ahead and paint in some of these guys. I don't really want that in there. Don't really want that one in there. That's not on that layer. All right, I think we're pretty close. This is good. I think we're close finally. All right, let's go ahead and I'm going to color in some of this stuff over here. I think I want this up in here. Leave that for a little bit of variation. That's fine. I mean, all this stuff is outside really of our gameplay area anyway, and that's part of what I wanted this is I needed some flatter areas really for the gameplay. So you can turn your grid back on and seeing what does that look like right in that 9x9 tile grid, whoops, that we're going to be doing all of our gaming. So there you go. I think that's it for right now. Let's go ahead and step into getting this thing prepared to send into cities. Alright, as you can see, I've actually turned off the mountain layers for right now, just to help be able to see what we're doing right now. But what we do with the ground layers, we're just going to replicate into the mountain layers. And this is actually a good point to bring up a couple of quick ways to help your workflow a little bit. Right now would be a good time to hit Control S and save, so that you've got this saved. Another thing you could do is what we have over here is called Snapshots. And because I just reopened this, I don't have any history here, but you could do a snapshot on this, and so that if you've done a bunch of work, then you can always revert back to that snapshot. Whereas with history, I think there's 20, you have 20 actions that you could redo back, and we're getting ready to do a number of actions that may be helpful to be able to step back from. So just so you know, that's something you can incorporate at any point in your workflow. Just create new snapshots rather than saving or reopening, and you can quickly revert back to that. And sometimes it's a good thing to do before you start doing something like we're going to do now, which I would call very sort of artistic, and it's by you're using your own eye to sort of determine how to do this. And so I'm going to do my best to sort of convey what I'm looking at and how I recommend you do it, but it's going to take a couple of efforts and a couple of tries to get it right. So let's go into this first. The first thing we need to do is go to these contours, and you can, if you want to select multiple ones, you could hit Shift or Control will actually allow you to select them individually. So I would recommend hitting Shift to select them all, and then right-click on any one of them, and then we want to rasterize layer style. And basically what this is doing is this is locking in the color and the tone that we had on it. And as you can see, this is sort of interesting too. I made a mistake and I actually accidentally colored that contour 2 with a black or a dark gray, but it doesn't matter because we had that what would you call it, the layer style over it that changed the color, so it ended up not mattering at all. So it's kind of funny, you look at this contour and you turn it off and on, it's a much lighter color than it appears on here because of the way we rasterized it. So not a big deal, it is what it is. Alright, so now what we want to do is you just play with this a little bit. I think you're going to be going back and forth on these things, but now what we want to do is we want to blur these things out. And what we're going to use for this is what's called box blur. In fact, let's go to our first, make sure you're on the first contour, and we're going to do a box blur. And set a radius 4 to 6 right in there somewhere. 4 is going to be a little less aggressive. And I know it's really hard to tell. We'll be a little bit clearer on some of the other ones, but what it's actually doing is adding almost another contour in there with the blur. And so when we change the value, you can kind of see it as we're doing it in there. It just increases sort of the width of the box that goes around that. So I'm going to do a 6 in this case, and because it closes some of these other things in. So we're basically almost adding an additional set of contours in there first. And then you can go to contour 2, and because you've already done it, up here if you see it, Control F, you can just select contour 2, hit Control F, and it does it to that one. Select contour 2.5, hit Control F, and it does it to that one. And actually, you know what? I'm going to undo this one. Let's see if we can do it. Because it's a little bit lighter color, I'm actually going to turn the opacity back just to try and dial it down just a hair. I'm going to do box blur from the beginning again, because we may want to change the radius on this one. It's a little bit fuzzier than I think I want it to be. There we go. Maybe that's better. 2, 3. Maybe we'll go ahead and leave it at a 3. That seems to be about where I want it right now. All right. And now we can just go into the mountain layers and do the same thing. Select Shift, Rasterize Layer Styles. Go to Contour 3, make sure it's selected, and turned on. And then Control F on that one. Control F on Contour 4, Control F on Contour 5. And actually I'm going to undo those. This is a good example of how to undo them. I'm going to go back just a little bit. I think I'm going to increase the radius of the box blur. Box blur. I think I'm going to go to a 6. See how that looks. That's a little better. 4. I think I like, in this case, I do think I like it a little bit heavier. Come on. There we go. All right. Now go to Contour 4 and then Contour 5. There we go. Now we're almost done. That's the last bit of blurring, I think. We can actually go through, let's do filter, make sure we're on Contour 5. I'm going to go ahead and add just a regular blur. And this is where your artistic sense is going to get it. I just want that to blur out just a little bit more. So I'm hitting Control F to blur that a few more times. And then I'm going to do the same thing on 4 and 3. And it's a little hard to see it because it's pretty subtle. But I could actually do something called Blur More, which is a heavier blur. All right. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through, I think the tonal variation between these is a little bit high still. And I think 2 is fine. Let's go to 3. And I'm going to start knocking back the opacity on some of these, trying to reduce the difference between the two of them just a little bit. Yeah, that's a little bit closer. And that's a little bit closer. All right. So now if we were to import this into cities, what you'd have is you'd have these plateaus of color. So it would be kind of flat, you'd have a little bit of gradation, and then it would come up, and then it'd be dead flat right here, and then it'd go up and be dead flat, and we don't want that. So now what we're going to do, and you're going to ask the question, I think, why didn't we just use clouds to begin with? Because now we're going to use clouds. This clouds layer that we have up here. You could actually throw away the threshold at this point. We don't need it anymore. But the clouds we do actually need. And the reason that we can't use this, and what I'll do is I'll go ahead, in fact, I'm going to show you how to do this really quick. I'm just going to file, well, let's make sure I get my background on correctly here. I'm going to do File, Save As, PNG. We're going to go to Height Maps. You can see I've got a bunch of different ones in here that I've been using for this tutorial I've been playing with here. So I'm going to go version 4 underscore, we'll call this clouds. So I'm going to show you what that looks like when we get in there, and the reason that we can't use that one. So for right now, what we need to do is we're going to go to opacity, and we're going to turn this way back until it almost disappears, actually. So you can see the contours below it again. And then what we're going to do is we're going to pull it back up ever so slowly. And what we're trying to do is in these areas where you have this pretty consistent kind of gray tone at that contour has been a little bit of a problem. If I was to do it again, I might add another contour level between 4 and 5, just to get away from some of that flatness that we're seeing in there. In fact, I think I'm going to have to go ahead and turn that back a little bit more now. There we go. I'm trying to get rid of this flat tone in there. And so I'm using this clouds layer to sort of add just a little bit of tonal value back in there and give it a little bit of variation so it's not quite so flat. And maybe right in there somewhere. Maybe what I'll do is I'll bring these contours back up just a hair. I'll bring contour 4 back up just a hair. And I'm going to turn clouds up again. And what that's going to do is that's going to actually give me a little bit more height in these peaks. And yeah, I think just looking at it, we've got some nice tones. We've got some pretty clear whites for peaks. We've got some pretty clear lower areas. We've got a changing tone going up through the rivers so that these will be flat when we fill in the water elevation for the ocean. We'll be able to have to add water sources back up into there, things like that. So I think I'm dead on finished right there. So let's go ahead. I'll show you how to export this. Save as, and we'll go back to our height maps. Make sure you save it as a PNG. And then we created 4. We're going to call this one, we'll call this version 1, since this is our first attempt at it. And now what you can do is go ahead and save that. Make sure the compression is set to none, interlace to none. Okay, you're good to go. And then go ahead and hit Control S and save this file. Because what you'll be able to do is come back now and adjust some of these other contours if you need to. You can kind of start playing with the colors a little bit, and if you need to blur them out a little bit more so you don't have such a peak area in there, you continue messing with the opacities and blurred values in here, and I think it's going to get you exactly what you want. And just as an example too, I'll tell you what, I'll turn clouds off, and I'm going to do this one as well. I'm going to save as PNG, and I'm going to show you the difference between all 3 of them and why having it merged together actually really helps. So we're just going to call this one just contours only. There you go. So we're going to load all 3 into cities here, and we'll see how they look. We'll see you there in just a sec. All right, here we are in the game, and we'll go to Tools, Map Editor. We're going to do a new map, and then create. It doesn't really matter which climate you want to use. I just use temperate usually when I'm doing this. It might matter, but I've not tried it in different ones, so I'm just using temperate for now. And yeah, I hope this series has been good for you guys. I'm sorry it's run into being a little bit long, but I really felt like it was important to share kind of all the process with you as much as just doing it step by step, because I want you guys to be able to do this on your own in many different ways. And I promise you that even though it's taken a good solid hour to an hour and a half for all 3 of these, that when you get the process down, I could easily do this in 10 minutes. And so I hope that works well for you guys too. It's just taking us a while to get there from here. So what I've got is I actually have done 4. And the reason I did a second one is I'll show you what version 1 looks like and what the issue was with the one that we exported just a few moments ago. After I had imported it and spent a little time looking at it, and I think it's a good lesson to show you how you can make a quick tweak to make it a little bit better. So first, let's start with the contours only and why we are not using this map in and of itself. And you can continue to blur this, and this is still going to happen, but I really felt like this was the best way to get the base to work with the clouds layers. So anyway, as you can see, you can very clearly see how those contours fit in there, because we have a definitive color value, and so on and so forth. And so it's just interpolating between those 2 values, and you end up with, essentially a contour map in the real world almost here. So you end up with these very clear flat areas with a very steep slope, a flat area, steep slope, and that's just the way it works. And that's why I didn't think using it just like that was good for you, but this is an excellent way to kind of get the basic landforms in. And as we step to these other ones, you'll see where the real value comes in. So now I'm going to show you why clouds in and of itself doesn't work. This is purely of the clouds layer. And you can see how severe and how it kind of messes with some of the mechanics of the game. You can see these edges, and that makes us really super stretched because it's so vertical. We have such a sheer color, one right next to the other. That doesn't mean you couldn't turn it back and subtly adjust it to get there, but I tried doing that, and that's the reason this series took so long to get out, is I had to find a new way to do this, because the way that I would typically do this in map making and using this clouds layer as a second alternative, neither one of them worked. You ended up with these really rocky, severe, difficult to use terrains. And that's not to say you couldn't come in here and spend some time, let's change the brush size a little bit here, cleaning these areas out and flattening out the ridges, and you could probably make something out of this that's still pretty severe, but might be kind of neat to play with. I remember seeing BOO play on a map that was not, it was still pretty severe like this. But so you could come through and clean this up, but I really honestly think that once you get good with that Photoshop process, it's so much faster than this and gives you such a more sort of natural terrain, whereas this is, I guess unless you live in the Swiss Alps or Nepal or something like that, you're not going to be having terrain that's flat with sheer slopes and then rocky kind of karst topology. So anyway, that's why I didn't want to do that. And so this is the first version of the combined between the two. And as you can see, we lose a lot of the severity from the clouds layer, and we lose the very flat sudden slope of the contours layer, and it starts to look a lot more natural. And this is again, it's going to need a little bit of TLC to come in here and smooth some of these things out, but you could honestly probably do this in 2 to 3, maybe 5 minutes at the most, just kind of going through and touching things up. But that said, as I mentioned in that while we were still in Photoshop, you can see that white. So this is the very top, that 0 white layer, the contour 5 layer, and it's created these sort of almost like tabletop mesas. You could leave it here if you wanted to, and probably even adjust this a little bit. But I also wanted to take it and show you a second version where I went back into Photoshop and spent 2 or 3 minutes just tweaking the opacities and the colors and blurs just a little bit more to get a better version of it. So let's step into that one real quick. Import version 2. And so there you go. You can see how it actually smoothed it out. It brought in some a little bit higher areas in between, and I think it looks way, way better. And you can come down kind of at the sea level, and you're starting to get a sense of how you get this kind of hills in the background and rolling topography here that you can work with in the game. And again, it's going to take a little bit of cleaning up, but not much. And you can kind of step out here to where we kind of had our ocean layer. Ooh, see if we can see it. It's a little hard to do. And you can see how close this, I probably would go through and tweak this a little bit to make this a little bit better, but it works out pretty well. But come in around here and along this beachy front, the beach front of the ocean, maybe I'll smooth some of this out a little bit along the edges and the where our inlet comes in, little things like that. I'll spend a little bit of time kind of fixing some of these things, but I don't need to do much of it, just a little bit. Yeah, in fact, I think I kind of like that right there. This is all off map really for the most part, so I don't have to spend too much time doing it, but it doesn't take much. This is kind of a neat little canyon that was cut from water coming down. I can see right now that this might be a little bit of an issue when we've got water kind of cascading down through here, which you might be okay, kind of coming over this area. So this is a good way to come in through here, maybe turn down the brush size and the strength a little bit and bring some of this out to kind of create a little bit better, more channelized channel, for lack of a better term. Kind of clean some of this guy out a little bit. Yeah, come in through here. There we go. That might fix that a little bit. So there's going to be a little bit of that in-game. And yeah, there we go. In fact, let's go ahead and set the water elevation really quick. We'll do that with you guys. Water elevation, let's set it to, so this is the sea level. We'll set it to 100, because that's about where I had planned on setting it. And there it is. So now you can see these rocky shores that I had wanted to work on, kind of at the inlet of the bay, as you're coming in on boats to be able to see this kind of cool cliffs on one side, cliffs of Dover, I think I called them, and our kind of our inlets coming in, and we've got a little bit of our rivers filling up, and this worked out exactly like I had planned too, where we changed the tone of it so that we had a river that was climbing in elevation. So now what you can do is you can come in with these water sources. I like to set the water capacity pretty high so these rivers are flowing pretty good. So I'll set it maybe like 0.75, and then come up here to the headwaters and drop in a water source. Let me bring it down just a little bit. And there you go. So that's going to fill up over time. We'll go add a couple more really quick. Let's go over. Oh, that's interesting. So this actually was at a level that corresponded with the sea level, so that's good. That actually makes it a little bit easier. But maybe what I might do is I think I'm going to go ahead and add another water source in here so that I could raise the level of this a little bit. And I'm going to turn the capacity down because we're on a lake, but I want to raise it up just a hair. There we go. That should work, I think. Is that flowing? Yep. So you can see it starting to flow in there. So eventually this lake will fill up and be a little bit higher than these other water sources. So let's add a couple more water sources really quick, and then we'll be done with our tutorial. I'm going to turn this capacity back up on this one because I want this river flowing pretty heavily. But I'm going to knock down the elevation just a hair. There we go. That should work. And then let's come in here. We'll add a water source up in here. We'll knock it down just a hair. And again, when you start seeing how this is coming through, you can see that white ghost. It's not going to do that because this isn't a flat elevation. This is going to be dropping. And so even though it shows it like that, the water's not going to go up that high because it'll be falling down through these channels. And in fact, I think I'm going to go ahead and, well, I'll see where this water goes. I might end up adding another source in here just to keep this flowing really well, but we'll see. Where else? We need one up here as well. I'm going to lower this one down just a bit. There we go. And that'll fix itself over time. It'll get the water source started, and then that'll look more like a river. This probably should have started off the map somewhere, but that's all right. All right, then we have this high lake right here, so let's add a water source right there. There we go, perfect. And all right, I think what I'm going to do is step back for a second, let the water fill in, and then we'll come back and we'll do some trees. So I'll be right back. All right, it looks like our water elevation has worked out pretty well. We've got, you can see we set a source back up in here. This river's flowing pretty well. This one's flowing pretty well, coming on down. And one of the things that's helpful to check too is you can go to your transportation on your boat. And you can come in here and you can see the arrow, the way the arrows are flowing will tell you which way the water is flowing. And that's particularly important down here at our starting tile, because we want to make sure that we have water flow along the edge so we can be able to put our water source and our poop source or sewer source on a waterway and have them separated and have water flowing so that we can always have clean water intake. And then as we kind of move upstream here, it looks like we've got a couple spots where I had to add in a secondary source to get that water flowing quite right. So we've got a couple spots where the water's kind of flowing backwards a little bit, but it's not that big of a deal, I don't think. And we've got our ocean out here, looking pretty good. It's you can see some shallow areas out there, which is exactly what I wanted, kind of these shelves, and this really interesting sort of topography along the edges of the water. So I think that turned out pretty darn well myself. And yeah, we got a water source down in here. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and spend a little bit of time putting in some trees and gussying up just a little bit, but I'm just going to do that through a time lapse, so this is pretty quick. So here we go. Thank you all very much for watching these 3 episodes, and this might be stretching into 4, I hope not, but I'm going to try and cut this down to 3. And then I might do a 4th episode actually taking this map and then doing all the transportation and everything over it, just to show you how that process works too and how they can be integrated. So the purpose of this one was just to show you how to make the base map and then let you guys find either another tutorial or something like that on setting up roads and trains and everything like that to get it ready for in-game play. But if you guys are interested, leave a comment down below. Send me a message on Twitter, something like that. Let me know if you want me to take this map and turn it into a fully usable one with transportation and everything set up so that you could just start playing it in-game. I'd be happy to do that, but only if I get some feedback from some people who are interested in doing it, because I've got another game map that I'm going to start on pretty soon, that Portland map that I set up some time ago, and I haven't been playing it, but I'm going to get back into it again. So there you go. Thank you again very much. Leave a like, leave a subscribe. Tell me how it worked for you in the comments. If you've got any problems, maybe I can help you sort them out. So there you go. Enjoy the quick time lapse. Thank you all very much. Bye-bye.